Revenue sharing just flipped college athletics on its head. For over 100 years, student athletes were told to play for pride and a scholarship, and just maybe the opportunity to get paid to play their game professionally. But now, they're getting paid in college, directly by their schools. Starting officially on July 1st, 2025, your favorite college quarterback might be making over $1 million. That women's basketball star, she could be getting a six-figure deal directly from her university. And this isn't name, image, and likeness money that we've seen take over college athletics over the last few years. This is the universities writing checks directly to their student athletes. So, how did we get here? What does this mean for your favorite school? Is college sports about to become professional sports with dorms? Let's break it all down. First, here's exactly what's happening. Number one, direct revenue sharing. Schools now have a budget of $20.5 million to spend on their student athletes directly. They can cut that check however they want, to whoever they want, as long as those kids play a sport for their school. And that cap will increase by about 4% annually. Number two is expanded scholarships. Every sport used to have a limit on the number of scholarships it could give out for that sport. Football was 85, men's basketball was 13, baseball was 11.7. Interesting number. But now, they can give scholarships up to their roster limits, which brings us to number three. There are new roster limits in college athletics. While more scholarships are available, roster caps are going to be introduced to keep you from having an unlimited team size. That 105, it's the scholarship limit for football, but it's also their roster limit. Same with 15 for men's basketball and women's basketball. Baseball, meanwhile, drops down from 40 on the roster to 34. And the fourth thing that's happening doesn't impact current student athletes, but past student athletes. That's backdated pay. Almost $2.8 billion going to former student athletes for playing their respective sports. And number five, enhanced NIL oversight. Since name, image, and likeness payments were approved by the NCAA in 2021, schools have gone crazy, spending up to $4, even $5 million for a single student athlete to come to their university. The NCAA partnered with Deloitte to create NIL Go, a clearinghouse for all third-party name, image, and likeness deals across the country. Any deal that's worth over $600 has to be submitted to NIL Go for approval. A new organization called the College Sports Commission will oversee all of these new regulations. Now, all of that might seem like a lot. Revenue sharing, name, image, and likeness, a new clearinghouse, a new commission in charge of college athletics. How did we get here? What happened to get us from the purest form of amateur athletics to what we see now? Well, let's break down the timeline. The lawsuit that broke everything came down in 2020. Grant House, a former swimmer at Arizona State, along with several other student athletes, filed a lawsuit that basically said, "We help generate billions of dollars in college sports. We'd like a cut." And House wasn't talking about the possibility of name, image, and likeness deals from third parties or getting a little bit of cash for making an appearance. No. He and his fellow student athletes were talking about getting a cut of the revenue generated by athletic departments every single year. That meant getting a cut of the massive TV contracts, ticket sales, and merchandise, and even video game revenues that power college athletics. Plus, they wanted back pay for all of the student athletes before them. The case landed in front of Judge Claudia Wilkin, the same judge who had already ruled against the NCAA in two landmark lawsuits in the past, O'Bannon and Alston. Soon, the lawsuit gained class action status, and the NCAA had a nightmare on its hands. They were faced with the reality of paying back every student athlete for the last decade, which could have totaled up to $10-12 billion. So instead, after years of conversation and debate, the sides settled. The settlement guaranteed $2.8 billion in back pay over the last decade to student athletes. But more importantly, they also agreed to allow schools to start sharing their revenue directly with student athletes moving forward. But with all this money flowing in, someone has to keep track of it. The settlement doesn't just allow revenue sharing. It completely restructures how NIL deals are monitored and regulated. Enter NIL Go, a new reporting system that requires transparency for any third-party NIL deal totaling $600 or more. Every deal gets logged, tracked, and approved for compliance. So in theory, no more mystery contracts or handshake deals under the table. That $1 million collective deal, it gets reported. The local car dealership sponsorship, over $600, it goes in the system. The goal is transparency and preventing the kind of pay-for-play deals that were disguised as NIL in the past. And, like I mentioned, there's a new sheriff in town. The College Sports Commission, or CSC, is a new body that's specifically tasked with enforcing these new regulations. Think of them as the IRS of college sports compensation. The CSC will investigate violations, ensure compliance, and basically make sure that colleges and student athletes are all playing by the new rules. Because with millions of dollars now trading hands legally, the stakes for breaking the rules just got a lot higher. So here's how the money works. Starting with the 2025-2026 school year, schools are now allowed to spend up to $20.5 million paying their student athletes directly. That's roughly 22% of what a Power 4 school makes in revenue annually. And that number is going to increase by 4% every single year. But here's the key. Schools don't have to participate. They're allowed to opt in. Now, basically every school in the Power 4, that's the SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, and the ACC, has already said they're all in. Plus, a lot of schools in the Group of 5 and the newly restructured Pac-12 have also said that they're going to participate. But a lot of smaller schools are worried that they're not going to be able to compete because they can't afford the full $20 million. And if you don't opt in, good luck recruiting against the schools that are guaranteeing a paycheck. But let's talk specifics. If your school has $20.5 million to divvy up, what's that going to look like? Well, several schools have already laid out their game plan for spending all of that money. But the general breakdown looks something like this. Industry experts are predicting that football teams will get roughly $15 to $16 million, or 75 to 80% of that total money. Men's basketball will get anywhere from $2 to $3, maybe even $4 million, depending on the school. And then the rest of the money, whatever's left over, whether that's $2 or $3 million, will be spread out among the remaining programs at every school. Now, that money doesn't have to be split up evenly. What I mean is, just because Alabama has $16 million to give out for football, doesn't mean that every single football player is getting the same amount. You can see a quarterback getting $3 million, a left tackle getting $2 million, and a backup running back maybe getting $50,000. But there's also a massive complication to all of this, and that's Title IX. Title IX requires universities to give equal opportunities to both male and female student athletes. So if your football team is making bank, what happens to women's sports? Well, some schools are planning equal distribution models. Every athlete gets the same base pay regardless of sport or gender. Others are boosting women's programs with additional funding, scholarships, facilities, bigger coaching staff to maintain compliance. For example, UConn, a women's basketball powerhouse, plans to invest heavily in women's basketball to maintain their dynasty moving forward. But at the end of the day, the math is tricky. There's only so much money to go around, and a lot of schools are having the debate about, should we pay the schools that generate the most revenue the most in revenue sharing? Logically, the answer is yes. But in reality, schools are still trying to figure it all out. And there's also the question of, where does this money come from? Like I said earlier, $20.5 million is on average about 22% of what a Power 4 school makes in revenue annually. That money's not just going to come out of thin air. So you're seeing a lot of different movements around college athletics to raise those funds for student athletes so that the schools can be competitive. Schools are raising money from boosters and donors. We're seeing increased ticket prices across the country. Even concession costs are going up in a lot of places. A lot of schools have already announced that they're just completely cutting smaller non-revenue sports. And many schools are just reallocating existing funds from one budget in the athletic department into revenue sharing, meaning that people are losing their jobs. And this is a statewide issue too. In Louisiana, lawmakers are literally raising taxes on sports betting to raise funds for student athletes at LSU and other state schools. But at the end of the day, if you're a fan, your ticket sales, your merchandise purchases, buying a hot dog at the stadium, all of that contributes now to your school's revenue sharing. You're the one paying the student athletes now. And while all of this is just getting underway, we already know what some of the ripple effects are going to be. Because this isn't just changing player compensation, it's reshaping everything. Think about EA Sports coming back with college football as a video game. Student athletes now get paid to play the game on the field, and they get compensated for their image likeness in the video game. Think about the transfer portal. Student athletes now have guaranteed revenue sharing opportunities and third-party NIL deals that they can consider when they hit the portal trying to find a better landing spot. The NIL landscape probably will look a little bit cleaner now that revenue sharing is in place. But will the bagman return? Will under-the-table payments start to become popular again now that everybody's making something? Schools are always going to look for an edge, and this is one way we've seen them find an edge in the past. Not to mention the impact that this might have on conference realignment. When you think about one of the biggest sources of revenue for a school, it's the TV contract, and those are signed by conferences. Right now, the SEC and the Big 10 have the most lucrative TV contracts in college athletics, while the Big 12 and the ACC and many other conferences are making less money. If you want to make more money to be able to pay your student athletes, are you going to try to do what you can do to get into one of those bigger conferences and get a better TV contract? Yeah, absolutely you are. And lastly, this is going to impact the fan experience. Things are going to become more expensive, but you're also watching student athletes finally get compensated for their entertainment value. But at the end of the day, not everyone thinks that that is great news. There are several potential downsides, and we're already starting to see some of them come into play. Smaller sports getting cut to pay for football and basketball roster expansions. New roster limits might actually reduce opportunities in non-revenue sports. Will academic standards slip as athletics becomes more professional? Will competitive balance be destroyed by the ultra-wealthy schools? Some athletic directors are already warning that programs like tennis and gymnastics and swimming and other non-revenue sports are at risk of being cut either partially or altogether in order to make all of the money work. And at the end of the day, there are still a ton of big questions left up in the air. Are student athletes employees? Can international students get paid? What federal legislation is coming down the pipe? How will this actually be enforced? Those are all questions that we're going to see debated in the public forum over the next year or two, or even 3 or 4, as schools and the NCAA and the new College Sports Commission all clash on what's best for college athletics. But while all of those debates are coming down the pipe and all are going to be worth listening to and paying attention to, right now, what we know is that student athletes are getting paid. And frankly, it's long overdue. Is this the professionalization of college athletics? Yes. Is it fair compensation for athletes that generate billions in revenue every year? Many people also say yes. Will it all work? We're about to find out. The old question was, should student athletes get paid? That debate is over. The new questions are, how much, by whom, and what happens to the sports that can't pay for themselves? Ready or not, this is college sports now. And frankly, it's about time. What do you think about revenue sharing? Are you excited about athletes getting paid, or are you worried about what's going to happen to the sports you love? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with everything that's going on in the world of sports.